Hey guys, my name is TJ, and if you don't know who I am basically just a guy who was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder as an adult, and through that journey, I just happened to pick up a lot of information about it and learn a lot about it, and now I have some sort of craving to teach people about it, and so I will be making some videos about it and different aspects of it to just kind of scratch that itch on my end, teach people about it, but also give other people an opportunity to learn something about autism that they wouldn't have known without watching this video. So what I'm going to go over in this video is just what autism is, and then I'm going to go over the diagnostic criteria for it that psychiatrists in America will use so they know what to look for in diagnosing autism spectrum disorder, just exactly how it comes out of the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the 5th edition. And then I will be relating it to me and my life. And so you guys will get sort of a behind the scenes of how autism affects people, and not only other people, but myself. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder. It is not a behavior disorder that occurs during the developmental process of the brain. And what happens is you end up with too many neurons on each half of the brain. And so you may hear people say, are you more left side or are you more right side brain person? And that is actually a thing that happens. But with autistic people, whenever their brains develop with too many neurons on each side, you end up with a situation like a concert or a sporting event when you have 20,000 cell phones trying to connect to the same Wi-Fi, and it doesn't really work. And so you end up with long range under connectivity and short range over connectivity, which means if you are trying to do a brain function that requires two sides of your brain, it's hard for your brain to do that because there's so much going on the left side of your brain that it's hard to reach out to the right side. Just like if you're at a concert, it's hard for your phone to reach out to another network to get on a website because there's so much going on this Wi-Fi that it just can't do it. But on the other hand, if you are trying to do a brain function that requires only one half of your brain, it's very easy for you to do that because there are so many neurons there. Just like if you're at a concert and you are trying to, say, airdrop a photo to someone, it's going to be very easy to airdrop that photo to a stranger because there are going to be a lot of strangers there. You can probably guess a lot of the functions that require two sides of the brain or one side of the brain just from that information. Two sides of the brain you would probably guess would be social communication and social emotional regulation, stuff like that. Just things that we stereotypically don't really do very well. But on the other end, you have things that you can probably guess we do pretty well. A lot of people are good at math, or a lot of people are good at music, and a lot of things like that require one side of the brain. And so, yes, stereotypically that is kind of correct. And so now that we know what autism is, let's hop into the diagnostic criteria as listed in the DSM-5. So it has it broken up into two major categories, and then each category has three different criterias of just like how that is going to be manifested. And I also want to point out that this is the 5th edition of the DSM, and in the 4th edition they had multiple diagnoses that you could get if you had autism spectrum disorder. One of those is Asperger's. That's not a phrase or verbiage that is used anymore. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that in this video, but if you want to know why, message me. I'll let you know. I'm always glad to teach more information. In the DSM-5, it is now autism spectrum disorder, regardless of your level of functioning, whatever verbiage they will use. It all will fall under autism spectrum disorder. The first subcategory is persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts. So the first one here is deficits in social emotional reciprocity. That's a really hard word to say, I'm sorry. What this means is abnormal social approach and failure of normal back and forth conversation, and just failures to initiate or respond to social interactions. And it's actually really funny that this is the first one that it is listing, because I have an example of this from just yesterday. I had someone unfriend me on Facebook, and whenever I asked them why, they said it was because whenever they would send me videos and Facebook Reels, I wasn't responding to them So I was watching the videos, and sometimes I would reply with like an LOL or like that's funny. So if you're trying to start a conversation, say something like hi. That's usually a good way to start a conversation. And the next one is deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interactions, ranging, for example, from poorly integrated verbal and nonverbal communication to abnormalities in eye contact and body language to deficits in understanding and use of gestures. I'm pretty not good at nonverbal communication. I just can't read it. Like if you're feeling an emotion and you're like in the same room with me, I'm not gonna pick up on it. I try to, especially like being married. Like I feel like it's a really important thing to like be able to do, but like I just can't do it. We definitely are comfortable now, just being able to like verbalize like I am sad or I am angry. Even if you don't want to talk about it right now, at least let me know how you're feeling, just so I know. One thing I will say is the middle of that one was abnormalities in eye contact and body language. A lot of people misunderstand that and think we can't use eye contact or like there's just like absolutely no eye contact. That's not true. It just says abnormalities. So that really just means anything outside of the norm. I don't use eye contact. I'll probably start a conversation by holding eye contact, but it'll fade and I don't really put a lot of effort in like bringing it back. I do also talk with my hands a lot, and sometimes that can be abnormal. Sometimes it's not. It just kind of depends on the day and depends on my mood. But if I'm in a really good mood, I feel like I can be maybe a little too expressive with my hands. But that's beside the point. It hurts nobody. So let's move on. The last one on this subcategory is deficits in developing and maintaining and understanding relationships, ranging, for example, from difficulties adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts to difficulties in sharing imaginative play or in making friends to absence of interest in peers. This one is pretty interesting because it's not one that people with autism can understand. I actually had to look up what this meant because I didn't understand it. So I will start with the two that I did understand, and I'll come back to the last one. So the first one I'll talk about is difficulties in sharing imaginative play or making friends. Making friends, I'm not horrible at. I just am bad at the things that you have to do to get to that point. I don't like making small talk. I don't like talking to strangers. And so at some point in the friend making process, that person's going to be a stranger that you're going to have to talk to, and you're going to have to do small talk because you can't just immediately go into the deepest conversations about your life. And then imaginative play, I just don't do it. I'm not very imaginative. I find it really hard to like think of things. Like if I were to draw a picture, like there would be no chance that I could ever draw you something that no one has ever drawn before. Everything I think of is something that has already been thought of. It's just hard to imagine things in my head. There's definitely deficits there. And then absence of interest in peers. Growing up, I just never really had friends like my age. I had a few that were cool and like a few that I hung out with. But like most of my close friends were like a few years older than me. Or they were actual adults. I feel like I befriended like a lot of adults that I just thought were cool. And I just thought it was more comfortable to hang out with them rather than someone my own age. There's different reasons for that for different people because that is kind of a recurring theme for neurodivergent people to be more comfortable with adults than other children. I think it's just because you don't have to like act like a kid. Like you're just like, kind of allowed to like talk. And so I think that's why, but like I said, different people have different reasons. But that is that. So we're going to move on down to the second and last. I forgot. I was just going to totally just gaslight you guys on this thing that I didn't understand and then not talk about it. So the thing I didn't understand that I had to look up was difficulties adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts. I actually didn't know what I thought this was. Whenever I first read this, I thought it meant like if your friend group wanted you to act a certain way, you would have to like change how you act, like to like hang out with them. And I was like, well, that like you shouldn't have to do that. But no, what this is saying is with adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts is you're adjusting your behavior depending on like where you are. So like obviously you would act different at work than you do at school or at home or with your friends or with your family. And wow, that's interesting. I don't think I do that. I'll have to ask people around me. The last major category is restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interest, or activities. So the first one is stereotyped or repetitive motor movements. A lot of the ones that are usually listed here are lining up toys or like flipping objects. Lining up toys was never a thing, but like I don't know why this is the thing I'm gonna grab, but it's a buffalo sauce. But like flipping objects, I've always been one to like flip things, or like I always will like flip things and like see how they land. Echolalia, which is the repeating things that other people say or things that you hear. Echolalia would be like if you heard a song that was maybe annoying and it got stuck in your head all day, and you don't know how to get it out of your head. With echolalia, it's maybe not a song, but it's just something that you heard someone say in passing, whether you even knew that person or not. And now that one little thing that they said is going to be repeating in your head for the next couple hours probably. It could be just something that has nothing to do with anything. It could be actual nonsense. It could be something that actually didn't have meaning and it stuck with you for that reason. The next one is insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines or ritualized patterns of verbal or non-verbal behavior, which I'll read out the list that they gave. Extreme distress at small changes, difficulties with transitions, rigid thinking patterns, greeting rituals, and eating the same food every day. For this, I like to think of the time that I was most independent whenever I lived in Arkansas, because I lived by myself for the most part. I supported myself, and so everything that I bought and all the groceries that I bought, it was all for me, and no one else had any say in that. And so every Sunday after church, I would go grocery shopping, and I would buy groceries, and I would buy the same exact things every single week. I would have the exact same order. I would buy either pop. Most of the time I was in Arkansas, it was sparkling water, but I would either get a case of drinks, and then I would get pizza, chicken nuggets, chicken strips, just a bunch of things that were easy to cook and were safe foods that I knew I was going to want. I never understood buying groceries for the entire week, because how am I going to know on Sunday what I want to eat on Friday? But I know that I'm going to want chicken strips, and I know I'm going to want pizza, so I'll just buy those. Other things on this list are difficulties with transitions. I've talked to Kaylee about this a lot. Whenever she works at overnights and I'm home alone at night, I have a really hard time going to bed on time. Not because I'm not tired, I just don't go to bed. If I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, the transition from the couch to the bed is just, I don't like to do it. Coming home from work, I have to transition. Like getting home, it takes a couple minutes to just kind of like, I gotta get used to being home for a minute before we do anything too crazy. Small changes don't really cause me a ton of distress unless it's like a change in my day. Today is my day off when I'm recording this, and if something would have happened and caused me to have to do anything for any reason, I probably would have been pretty upset about it. Luckily, we're good. I was able to stay home all day. We living. Number 3 is highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. And the key word there is abnormal, and it doesn't say abnormal interests. It is just saying it is abnormal in how interested you are. If you have known me for a long time, you probably know that mine is wrestling. I watched one wrestling show as a kid with my aunt. Ever since then, I was hooked. It just kind of clicked in my head. There were a few years where I was kind of out of it. Even to this day, I just love it. I watch it. It's crazy. I want to talk about it. I need more people to talk about it too. The next one would be autism. Right now is actually a pretty big one for me. Autism, which is crazy. It's obviously a new one. It's not one that I've always had. But ever since I have been diagnosed, it's all I want to talk about and it's all I want to learn about. But it's really, I understand that it's not something that everyone wants to hear about all the time, so that's why I'm making these videos, for me to talk about it. And if y'all want to listen, y'all can listen. If you don't, you don't. The last one is hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. The examples it gives are apparent indifference to pain, temperature, adverse response to specific sounds or textures, excessive smelling or touching of objects, visual fascination with lights or movement. I really like that they put hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input, because that's what it is. It's some people have some senses that are overly sensitive and some that they just don't feel. And I'm not going to do a ton of talking about it right now, but I will make a video about it eventually. But part of this that is actually affecting me right now is actually a hidden sense that people don't really know about, and it's not something that you ever would actually probably hear about without learning about autism. But it is a hidden sense called interoception, and it is your body feeling the messages that the body is sending your brain. And what that was doing for me was making me not feel hunger until I was very hungry, because I just was having a hypo reactivity to that sensory input. I wasn't feeling hunger until I was very hungry, and then at that point I was so hungry that I just felt sick, and then I didn't want to eat because I felt sick. That lasted a few days until I came across this and I learned about this, and so I'm actually learning a lot about it right now. I will be excited to make a video about this because now I just eat more. I just snack. I'll have a protein shake for breakfast, I'll eat lunch, and then between lunch and dinner I'll have another protein shake or a snack, just something to hold me over. Everything after that is really just notes for doctors and psychiatrists of what to look for. They are actually extremely important. Like, it's a lot of this is like the most important stuff, like in the DSM-5, because the first one says symptoms must be present in the early developmental period, obviously because you're born with autism, but it may not become fully manifest until social demands exceed limited capacities or may be masked by learned strategies in later life. And so this will also be another video that I do down the road about what is called masking. And what happens when people begin to mask is when children are very young and they are high functioning. Sometimes the small behaviors that are autistic traits that come out may be trained out of them, or they may be taught to not do those behaviors or do those things. And so it can subconsciously actually put a mask on them. And so what happens when you're masking for 10 or 15 or 23 years is you just have all of this pent up energy, and just everything that you've masked and just suppressed over your entire life is now coming to a head. And so a lot of people call it a canon event whenever people are diagnosed late, because it usually comes after a very large meltdown of some sort. My diagnosis came after a week stay in the Grippy Sock vacation. I enjoyed that stay, actually. I would go back. They had a swimming pool. I really enjoy swimming. But yeah, it builds up until you can't take it anymore. And so masking is actually quite unhealthy. It is very healthy for autistic people to be able to do the things that they need to do and be able to stim and play with toys like poppets. But it's very important for them to be able to do that because we are not able to regulate our emotions. And so these things like our sensory inputs and doing other things to give us some sort of stimulation helps us regulate those emotions and feelings. And then the next one is symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of current functioning. And so this is basically just saying if you have all of these symptoms or signs, but like you're fine and it's not actually like causing any like pain or like detriment to you, then you're probably not going to get the diagnosis. I mean, that's the word disorder. So that goes to show that to receive an autism diagnosis, you must not only show significant deficits in both social communication and repetitive motor and restricted motor movements and interests, but you also have to have social, occupational, or other areas being impaired by it. So that's what autism is, and that is what the DSM-5 says autism is, according to the American Psychiatric Association. And if you want to go even deeper into the DSM-5 and what the DSM-5 is, I will tell you that the DSM-5 text revision in 2022 was the first version of the DSM that included diagnostic criteria for autism in girls, because autism was pretty much only ever studied in men and boys, and so it looks a lot different in girls, and we just didn't know that because they didn't look at girls with autism. So we are finally getting to the age of knowing what autism is and what it looks like and how to find it and how to treat it. So it's very exciting. If you like this video, again, I hope that you would like it, comment, and maybe share it to someone else who might like to learn more about autism for maybe themselves, or maybe they have a loved one with autism and they would like to know a little more about it. Stay tuned, because I will be making more videos about this and different aspects of autism, such as the different senses, as well as masking. It's going to be fun. We're going to be on a fun journey together as we learn about neurodiversity.